My name is Commissioner Frank Avila. I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And the name of our show today is Avila, Making a Difference. And we have with us Tim Hetzner, and we are going to do comfort dog ministry and other type of ministry work that Tim is doing. Tim has served as president of Lutheran Church Charities since October of 2001. Tim has served in parish ministry for 24 years in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod as a director of Christian education, 22 of those years in the Northern Illinois District. The last 20 years, Tim has served as director of discipleship and Good Samaritan ministry at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Palatine, Illinois. He has also been involved at the district level, having served 2 terms on the board of directors, mission board, and board of youth ministry. Tim is currently teaching a Bible study called The World Among Us, with over 450 students from 26 different churches plus internet students. Tim each year leads studies tour over to the Middle East. Boy, you must be 100 years old, Tim.
I feel like it sometimes.
After 22 years.
I feel like it. Well, I figured if you live your life quick, get it over with, you know, I know where I'm going when it's over, so I'm all set.
Now, Tim, you serve as president of the Lutheran Church Charity, and it's the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Correct. We're a recognized service organization of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So we serve both in the Northern Illinois District here, nationally and internationally in missions and ministry. So, but we're located in Addison, Illinois.
Okay, and that covers a whole range of different type of ministry you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And I see you brought a pastor from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Well, he's male, but he hasn't been ordained yet.
Okay.
But we're kind of working on that, huh, Howie? Yeah, this is Howie. He is one of our 35 comfort dogs. Yesterday I would have said 34, but we just got one in. 35 comfort dogs that we use to be a bridge for ministry.
A bridge of ministry.
What we do is we get dogs, and they start their training when they're 5 weeks old. We're using all golden retrievers, and we get them then as service dogs, trained service dogs, and then we complete the training to broaden it so that they can serve in a parish. So they need to be able to work with little children, handicapped people, adults. They need to be able to fly on airplanes, need to go to nursing homes, elevators. They got to be able to go up on elevators. Anything, any place a person would go, the dogs need to be able to train to do.
And this, sir, will make people at ease. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're out there doing some type of work and they feel very excited or nervous. They make them calm.
Well, we know medically that when a person pets a dog,
yes,
that it reduces their heart rate.
Oh.
It makes them, so it lowers their blood pressure, makes them calm. And after petting a dog for a while, they open up. So it is a great bridge to touch people and to allow people to share what's going on in their lives. And there's a lot of hurting people out there, Commissioner, yes, just all over, not just in other countries, but right here in our own backyards.
And so you use these canine dogs mm-hmm. For this particular type of work.
Right.
In reaching and people will start opening up.
Right.
And then this way you could go in and do a little more work and maybe try and
right.
help them in what they are desperately in need of.
Right. What we generally do, if a congregation is interested in getting one of our dogs, we sit down with them and ask them to develop what's called a mission plan. How will you use this dog, both with your members in your church, but more importantly to the people in the community? Because the dogs are working dogs. And so they're kind of treated like staff people in a sense, but they're not church pets. Okay. And so we work with the church depending on the community that they live in and the type of things that they're doing to serve that community. If the ministry plan is one that they'll use a dog, we'll place a dog there. Then we train the caregivers and the handlers. The caregiver is where the dog goes at night when it's not vested.
I see.
You know, these dogs are well behaved, they don't bark, they don't, but at night, or when you take the vest off, they're dogs again. And they like to play fetch and do that type of stuff. But we use them, so once a congregation has identified 2 caregivers, so that if one's going on vacation for a week, it can stay with the other, then we train their handlers so that they know the proper technique of using a dog. When you go out with a dog, you have to be conscious that some people may have allergies to dogs or may be afraid of dogs. So whenever we're out at some place, we're always off to the side so somebody can walk by the dog if they're afraid of them or have an allergy. Then also teaching people how to listen. You know, a lot of times we think when people are going through difficult times that what's important is that you have to say something to them. Well, listening is one of the keys in helping people, because a lot of time people just need to talk, and in the process of talking they solve their own problem, and then to be able to pray with people, you know, or ask them if there's anything that you can pray. All the while the dog becomes that bridge.
Yes.
Now I can tell you that without a dog, to meet somebody strange and have them share just wouldn't happen. You add a dog into the equation, and it happens.
And and a dog is God's creature. Also, we're God's creatures, and God made other
Absolutely,
creatures.
they're creatures that God has created that are to bring glory to God.
Yes.
You know how we started it, Commissioner? Remember when the shootings took place at Northern?
Oh yes.
On Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Well, we got called in. We were using comfort dogs in our disaster response ministry. And so when the shootings took place through one of our churches out there, Emmanuel Lutheran in DeKalb, Pastor Marty Marks, we contacted him, and he was actually in lockdown at the time when I talked to him. And I said, you know, I know there's going to be a lot of chaos on the campus. Can we do anything? And he said, bring in the dogs. Oh. So we brought in the dogs. We had people that had comfort dogs. We brought them in, and it was a huge hit. In fact, we were the only faith-based ministry on the campus of DeKalb that were allowed inside the buildings. They gave us a key.
Oh, and this is the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Right. And so our dogs, well, our dogs are Lutheran also. I need to tell you, yeah, they're trained in the 6 chief barks. If you're a Lutheran, you'll know that from Luther's Catechism. But we brought the dogs out there, and it was a huge success as students came up and petted, shared their grief, shared their fears, whatever. Many times they came up and just hugged the dog. Well, anyway, we were out there for about a week. 3 months later, the students petitioned the administration at DeKalb and asked us to bring the dogs out. Oh. So we brought them back out, and I'll never forget that afternoon. The dogs came out, and they were in an open court area. And all of a sudden, the students saw it and recognized the dogs. They come running out of the dorms, and they all have their cell phones in their hands. And they remembered the names of the dogs. Not the handlers, but the names of the dogs. And at that point, I said, you know, why do I have to wait for a disaster to do this?
Yeah.
So we said, well, let's place them in churches, and let's explore how that can work. And that was a little over 2 years ago. And it has been one of the greatest outreach, touching ministries I have ever worked with.
And you mentioned why wait for a disaster, because these dogs, Lutheran Missouri Synod dogs, will probably maybe prevent a disasters.
Well,
we just don't know.
It's amazing. In fact, anytime I go, I have the dog with me, even if I'm running some errands. So if I run into the grocery store to get a gallon of milk, you know, quick in and quick out. If I have the dog with me, it takes me a half hour. Because somebody will stop, oh, can I pet your dog? And they start petting the dog, and they start sharing. They go, oh, you know, my granddaughter is crippled, and, you know, could you bring the dog over to her? Or they share what, I lost my job. And here you are in aisle 6 at the grocery store, and they're pouring their heart out to you. We had a case just the other day at one of our Lutheran schools in the Chicago area here. We got a call, and they asked if we could bring in one of our dogs. They had a student who was suicidal. And so one of our handlers came in with one of the dogs, and this girl was just sitting there. She didn't want to talk to anybody. She was angry. She wanted to kill herself. She was just sitting there. So we came in with the dog, just sat down. She didn't want anything to do with the dog at first. A few minutes later, she is on the floor with the dog, crying and hugging the dog. And she opened up about what was going on in her life. And the dog brought therapy to her to be able to share what was going on. Now, we also, when we place a dog in a church, we encourage the congregation or the church to have a room that they set up for the dog. And so that anyone in the church or the community can schedule an appointment with the dog, and they can come in and just spend a half hour with the dog.
Excellent.
Because we know what happens. You put a person in a room by themselves with a dog,
They'll start talking, huh?
they start talking to the dog like it's a counselor. And our dogs keep everything confidential. They don't take notes. So they're very, as you can see, they're very relaxing. Okay, play dead, Howie. Play dead. Dead. There.
So Tim, in the Bible, where does it first start saying about doing missionary work and going out and helping the people?
Well, actually, the people of God were always called. We were, when God created Adam and Eve and all of us, He wired us to be lovers. A lot of people don't realize that, but we were wired to be lovers by our Creator. Sin turns ourselves inside, which means we ask first what's wrong with us. And we ask first, is it good for me? Me, I. That's sin. God calls us to be servants and to serve and to show mercy and compassion, or to reflect His nature. And so actually all of us are supposed to be missionaries. But in the New Testament, actually the first missionary in the New Testament, which most people don't realize was a missionary, is in John's Gospel, chapter 4. It's a story about the Samaritan woman at the well. Now, I love traveling to the Middle East and take biblical biblical tours over to the Middle East. There, I got it. Help me out here, Holly. Yeah. Tours over to the Middle East. Because to understand the Bible, you have to understand the culture of the people and the land. You know, the land is the fifth gospel. So it's not just reading what the story is. It's understanding who Jesus is talking to, and also understanding the culture and the geographic location that Jesus is talking to. You know, a story can have a different meaning if he's in a different location, believe it or not. You know, just like with the feeding of the 5,000, or the Sermon on the Mount. Let me say this. Okay. On the Sermon on the Mount, did you ever ask the question how Jesus could talk to such a large group without a PA system? Well, I can take you over to Israel, and I can take you into the very valley that Jesus taught that Sermon on the Mount, and I can position you in a spot, and you can stand there, and there can be people up on the hill, and you can talk in a normal voice, and they will hear you as clear as a whistle. It's a natural amphitheater. It's a natural amphitheater. But the first missionary was this woman, a Samaritan woman. Okay. And it's in John's Gospel, chapter 4. And Jesus is taking the disciples through Samaria, which they didn't want to go through. The disciples of Jesus had tremendous prejudices. And the Samaritans and the Jews hated each other. It's kind of like the Palestinians in Israel today. And he stops at a well at noon. And the disciples want to get out of town. And Jesus isn't. He just stops there. And there's this woman there. And the disciples go in town to try to find some food, which trying to find kosher food in Samaria, they're not going to. And Jesus starts talking to this woman. And there's a statement as they converse back and forth where Jesus says, go and get your husband. And she says, I have no husband. And Jesus says, the truth is, you don't have a husband, but you've had 5 men, and the man you now have is not your husband. And we as Westerners assume that she's a loose woman. That's not the case. Jesus goes on and converses with her. She recognizes that he is the Messiah. She goes back and tells the people in her town, And they believe because of her testimony. In fact, John's gospel tells us 3 times that they believed. Now, how could she have had 5 men and the man she now has isn't her husband? Simple. In the Middle East, a woman can't divorce her husband. In fact, if a woman commits adultery, she would be stoned. But a man could divorce his wife by simply saying, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and you clap your hands. So she could have had 5 men that had divorced her. And the man she now has, she is living in probably her brother's house. How do we know that? The story tells us. Whenever the Bible tells us the time of day something is taking place, it tells us that because it's important to understand what's going on because of the time. The Bible tells us it was the 4th hour, which means it was noon. Now, what happens at noon in the Middle East? Well, it's kind of the same as what happens in Mexico. You take a siesta. Here, there's a siesta time. Same way in the Middle East. You get up early because of the hot sun. You get up early, do your work, and at noon, the man comes back and is with his wife and the children, because you live in either tents or one-room homes. The man and the wife, this is their traditional time to be together. And so the children and everybody else is pushed out. You can't do it at night because everybody's sleeping in the house with you. So the traditional lovemaking time for a husband and wife was at noon. So that's why she was not in a place, because she didn't have a man. So in that story, she brings people to know Jesus Christ before they ever met Jesus. So she is considered to be the first missionary. In fact, the Greek Orthodox Church lists her as that and makes her a saint. Other church bodies list her as a very loose woman. So.
And missionary work, you know, when God was feeding the 5,000 people and the 4,000 people, and the disciples were with God all this time, you would think that they would be a missionary and they would give also. But is that actually the story? Is that did they give of their free will, or
No.
or did they go find someone else that had it and let them give? What is missionary? Well, we know to do missionary work. What does that mean?
To do missionary work means to deny self, which means to say, it's not about me, it's about others, and to reflect the nature of God, which is mercy and compassion. The disciples, you know, we sometimes assume that Jesus kind of picked the top of the crop when he picked the 12 disciples. The reality is Jesus picked kind of the dumbest. I mean, they're a tough group, the disciples. They don't get it. And you see this all the time with Jesus and the disciples, which means there's hope for you and me.
Yes. and that's what I'm getting
well,
at.
And so with the disciples, Jesus is, there's 2 stories with Jesus is teaching large crowds. It's the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4,000. 2 different answers. Actually, the first group of 5,000 is Jews, and the second group is Gentiles. For the first group, Jesus had taught them all day. The disciples then come up to Jesus and ask him to dismiss them, to go home so they can get something to eat. They've been there all day, which is a normal request. Jesus says to the disciples, go feed them. They probably look like, what do you mean? There's 5,000 people here. And they say, how could we do that? That would take 5 months of a man's wages. Now, they never say to Jesus, we don't have the money. They just don't want to do it.
Or spend their own money.
And Jesus says, you don't have any? Go and find out some food. Get it. And they beat up some little kid, and they get, you know, a couple of fish and some loaves of bread, and they bring it to Jesus. And I'm thinking they're thinking that Jesus is going to say, this is all you got? Dismiss them. But he doesn't. Jesus never questions how much they bring. He takes it, and he blesses it, and he divides it. And the miracle is that he feeds the entire 5,000. Now, most times the story ends there in how we teach it.
Yes.
But it's not where the story ends. Because the people finished eating and were satisfied according to Scripture. And then the disciples go and pick up 12 bread baskets full of food, leftovers. Have you ever been to a potluck?
Oh, yes.
In a potluck, you know, everybody's supposed to bring something, you know, and you eat and so forth. Let's pretend you're at a potluck and you brought something and I brought something, and let's pretend 12 guys come in, didn't bring anything. They ate, and after the potluck was over, they, without anybody saying anything to them, decided to take home all the leftovers. What would you say? Who are these guys? And that's exactly what happens in that story.
The disciples took
because the text tells us that Jesus made the disciples get into their boats and told them where to go, which was only 5 minutes away, get in their boats, and then Jesus went back and dismissed the crowd. Well, dismissing the crowd was giving what we in Missouri Synod circles and others would say the benediction. Luigi the Aaron, you know, the Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face shine upon. Now, the very fact that Jesus tells the disciples to get out of there before he dismisses the crowd says that Jesus is angry at the disciples. Jesus then goes up into the mountain and prays for 8 hours. The disciples end up out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and they almost drowned to death because a storm came up. But it's not because of the storm, it's because they can't maneuver their boats with all the bread in it. The point of the story is this: the stuff of life can kill us. Did you ever go to a store and see something, say, I gotta have that, and you never knew it existed until you saw it? The stuff of life, and as Americans, even though we say how poor we are now with the economy, we are still one of the richest nations in the world. Come to Haiti with me, and you'll see people with absolutely nothing, no clothes, no shoes. The stuff of life and the hoarding of things consume our time, consume our money, and it consumes ourselves. And it works against what God created us to be, and that's lovers, people caring for and serving others. And you know, psychologists would tell you, if you're really messed up, they'll say, get out of yourself and do something nice for somebody else, because you'll walk away feeling good.
And
that's what our dogs do. That's what all Lutheran Church Charity does, whether we're in Haiti, Ethiopia, Palestine, wherever we are in the world or here. We touch people with mercy and compassion of Christ.
And your department or agency in
ministry
is in charge of doing ministry work in the United States and throughout the world.
Correct.
And if people want to get a hold of you, I think we have your website.
Correct.
Under your name, they could look on your website to see how.
That's right.
How they could help. Maybe they want to volunteer.
We have a weekly email newsletter that tells people, it's called Making a Difference.
Making a Difference. Yeah.
And it's a free newsletter that gets emailed once a week. And there's various ways, both locally here in the Chicago area and throughout the world, where people can get involved or people can help. And whenever we collect money to help people, it's $1 in, $1 out. Nothing gets taken out for administration.
Okay, how about your phone number? What's your
866
phone number? 866
455
455
6466.
6466.
And that's toll free.
And toll free. And please repeat that again, because we're going to have viewers out there that want to reach you.
It's 866 455 6466.
Okay, again, 866
455
455
6466. Bark the last two out, would you?
And
Howie has his own his own Facebook page too, if you need to get a hold of him.
And if you want a canine dog to come into your community, you could call up Tim.
That's right.
And they'll be happy to send one to your facility.
One of our dogs that are out there. It may not be me going out with the dog
Yes,
because I'm out of the country, but we'll be happy to bring a dog in for whatever the occasion is. Birthday parties, we use them also at funerals, nursing homes, hospital, any place where a dog can be used to touch people.
And this is Tim Hetzner.
Correct.
He's the president of the Lutheran Church Charity, and they're the top church. The main is Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Correct.
And you fall under the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Correct.
And they do missionary work throughout the world. And right now, they're very concerned about Haiti, you were mentioning before the show,
Mm-hmm.
because of the hurricane that's coming through.
Most likely I will be in Haiti next week. We're bracing for the hurricane now. I've got staff members there right now waiting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I liked your minister here.
Here's Howie's business card.
Look, he has his own business card, Howie.
Because he's a working dog.
Yes, thank you very much, and I hope people will call you and try and help you in your missionary work.
Okay, Howie? Yeah.